Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we have another fun hand where we are going to get a pretty good flop in a $5,000 buy-in tournament. So, here we open it up with King Jack of Diamonds, which is pretty standard from early position. I suppose if your table is like really tough, maybe you can fold, but King Jack suited is pretty great. So I open it up, the hijack calls, small blind calls, and big blind calls. All right, and here's our pretty great flop. It comes Jack 10-2 with 2 diamonds. So this is an interesting board because it should connect with most of our opponent's ranges pretty well besides exactly the big blind, because the hijack to flat needs to have either a pair or a good high card hand or a good suited connected hand. And high card hands and suited connected hands connect pretty well with Jack 10-2. Same thing for the small blind, right? Small blind should not be defending incredibly wide. It should be roughly that same range, just like really good suited stuff and big cards. So I actually think checking this flop is certainly viable. You may say, why would you want to check with top pair and a flush draw? Well, this is a hand that can very easily check call, right? If I check call, I know I'm not going to get blown off my hand on the turn. I'm just randomly going to have the second nuts some portion of the time. And that leads to pretty great situations for me. If I had the offsuit version of King Jack, I'd be a little bit more inclined to bet, because then there are bad turns for me, like any diamond. But in this scenario, I think checking is a nice play. There's nothing wrong with betting. I mean, don't think I'm saying that betting is some sort of a gigantic mistake or anything. If I was making a quiz for PokerCoaching.com, which is my training site, where you can go get a lot of interactive hand quizzes just like this. You can sign up for a completely free trial. I think I would give betting a score of 10. Or I'm sorry, 9 out of 10 I'd give betting, and then I'd give checking, I think, a 10 out of 10. With exactly this hand and maybe Queen Jack and Diamonds. Like, it would be even better to check with Queen Jack and Diamonds, because both have to worry about the same number of overcards. But Queen Jack is just a little bit worse, so you can get a little bit less value, because if you're against King Jack, you lose. I think Ace Jack is a hand that's probably also just good enough to bet for value, but these top pairs are very nice to put into your checking range when they also have draws to a very strong nut hand. So betting or checking is fine. And now small blind calls, and then the big blind makes it 12,000. What is this? This is almost certainly a very strong polarized range, and that's going to be a lot of hands like Ace Jack and better, right? Well, we block Ace Jack, so it's going to be something like Ace Jack, pocket 10s and pocket 2s, maybe Jack 10 suited, which we also block. And it's going to be draws. So which draws are not good enough to call? That's usually the question you want to ask. And in this scenario, I think the draws that are not good enough to call are going to be Queen 9, King Queen, and 9-8. Especially Queen 9 and 9-8. Those are draws you definitely consider raising. Now, the problem with raising here, though, is if you look at the opponent's stack, once he raises, he's essentially committed to getting it all in, right? If he does have Queen Jack, if he does have Queen 9 and I jam, and he presumes his queen is live some portion of the time, he has 8 clean outs, you would think, unless I have exactly what I have. So 8 clean outs plus maybe a few more outs. So let's call it 8 outs. And he's going to have to put in 16,000 to win a pot that's going to be, gosh, I don't even know, how much did he start with? He started with 30, so 16 into 60-something. So he's getting the right price to call. So in that situation, he needs to be a little bit more cautious raising with his marginal draws, because he's basically priced in to call. And you don't really want to be priced in to call with Queen 9 or 9-8 offsuit, right? So maybe he wants to be raising here instead with hands like 9-7 of diamonds. Like 9-8 of diamonds can just call because it has more equity, right? You really don't need to raise with your best draws very often. So ace high flush draw doesn't really need to raise, because sometimes the ace is good, and also if he does make a flush, he really wants to keep me or small blind in if we have a junky flush draw. Whereas, like, imagine I just have a set of 10s, right? And this guy has ace something of diamonds. If he bets 12,000, I'm going to shove. Now small blind is going to fold out 6-5 of diamonds. And then the ace X of diamonds doesn't have the opportunity to make a flush against the flush, right? So I don't think the ace high flush draw needs to raise. And it's getting a great price, right? Whenever you're getting a great price, you don't really want to do anything to screw that up. And raising can definitely screw that up, because then you sometimes have to just get all in with it. So I think the opponent's range should be pretty polarized, but also decently strong to raise here. Especially given I can just have aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, ace, jack, right? He has to be very cautious. Now, I also have to be cautious, though, because notice I'm playing quite deep stacked against the player in the small blind. That said, player in the small blind probably doesn't have very many nut hands. And the reason is because if the player in the small blind did have a set, he would almost certainly raise it from out of position. He has to think that big blind's not going to be raising here very often. So I can really discount the best hands from the small blind's range. So if I did have a hand like aces in this spot, I think I would just go ahead and put my money in. And that's because we are in fine shape against all the draws big blind should have. And small blind's going to have some hands with equity, either a draw or a decent main hand that has 5 outs to get there. And I really don't want to let those come along. So I think I need to be jamming most of my continuing range here. If I did have a hand like queen 9 of diamonds, what would I do? I guess I would call in that spot. So one of the few hands I would call is queen jack of diamonds. I'm sorry, queen 9 of diamonds. Because it does not have showdown value, and it's somewhat easy to be behind against a king high flush draw. Or maybe the random ace high flush draws. And also, I have no fold equity, right? So I'm just putting my money in, right? Whenever you're just straight up behind, you typically don't want to put your money in. You'd rather call and see if you get there on the turn. So pretty interesting spot. I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to play my whole range here, but really, most of my draws are going to be nut draws, so it's never that bad to get in with those, and a lot of my made hands are going to be really, really good. So the question is, if I do have this hand, do I care if small blind calls? And I don't know. I think it's actually somewhat likely small blind has me beat, or has a hand that has a decent amount of equity. Like, say he does have queen 9. I don't really care if he folds. Now, obviously, I'd rather him put all of his money on queen 9, but if I call here, I'm just giving him a decent price to call as well. So I don't think I mind jamming. Especially if I can ever get small blind to fold out ace jack, which I think does happen a decent amount if I do jam. So I do shove, and big blind's obviously going to call and everything. And he has ace 6 suited. So I don't actually think this is one of the hands he needs to raise with on the flop, like I said, because he's getting a great price just to call. And then also, a lot of people aren't going to assume you have the nut flush, right? And whenever you do, it's just nice to have the nut flush in spots where your opponents can also have flush draws. So, sure, he has fold equity, but he also has to ask how much fold equity does he actually have? Because imagine I fold out here with, whatever, ace-king if I bet it, which I don't. But if I did bet ace-king here, this guy in the small blind definitely has something pretty good. So is this player really going to fold ace-jack or king-jack in that scenario now? I mean, probably just not. So either I or the small blind are going to be in a situation where we are just not folding here that often. One of the two of us. So, of course, there is a little bit of dead money that he gets in the pot by raising, but I don't think it's necessary, especially since he can just easily call and maintain a great chip stack. In tournaments, there's a lot of value in not going broke. And by playing your draws in this manner, you really open yourself up to losing your stack. Like, if this was a cash game, I don't think getting it in would be that bad. But I do think in a tournament, this is probably not necessary. And if he is going to play this hand this way, I think he probably just wants to rip it all in. And the reason is because that's going to allow him to rip in with a few more draws if he's ripping it in. I say rip it in, I mean go all in. If he goes all in with hands like jack 10, pocket 10s, and pocket 2s, he can also shove with a few weaker draws. And you really don't want to keep your opponents in whenever you have only ace high, or only queen high, or only 9 high, right? You'd much rather than fold, and I think shoving is going to give you a little bit more fold equity in general. But we do get it in, and I don't know what the cards are, but I do know that this time I ended up winning the hand. So it ended up working out well this time, but even then, you have to understand the results don't actually matter that much. What matters is, did we get it in as a favorite or as a favorite against our opponent's range? And I think right here, we probably are. More often than not, we probably are. It's always tough, though. Really, the tough spot here is what happens if small blind decides to call. If small blind decides to call, that's no longer good. But, like I said, I don't think small blind's going to call here very often at all. So that's going to be it for this hand. I want to thank you all for being here with me today on PokerNews.com. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me on Twitter, @JonathanLittle. I'm always happy to reply. And again, if you have not, go to my training site, PokerCoaching.com, and get your completely free trial. There's no credit card required. And if you do decide to sign up and become a full member, then if you don't like it within 30 days, you can cancel. I want to make sure that all of the work I do actually benefits you. And if you don't think it does, then I don't want you to pay me any money because I only want to get rewarded whenever I add value to your life. I've had lots and lots of students who are winning World Series of Poker bracelets and circuit rings and online tournaments, and I want to allow that to happen for you too. It is going to take a lot of work. It's not easy, right? It's not as easy as watching a video. You actually do have to get in there and study and learn, but if you do it, I'm very confident if you put in volume and you stay disciplined, you will see life-changing results as well. So if that's what you want, go check it out at pokercoaching.com. Thanks for watching. Good luck in your games, and I'll talk to you next week.